Welcome to By-The-Bywater, a podcast on the Megaphonic Network. I'm Ned Raggett.
I'm Oriana Schwint.
I'm Jared Pekacek.
And we're here to talk about all things J.R.R. Tolkien, his work, his inspirations and impact, creative interpretations in other media, languages, lore, rip-offs, parodies, anything we think is interesting. Thanks for joining us. Hello and welcome to the 57th episode of By-The-Bywater. It is great to be back with you all. Final episode of the year, but perhaps even the more important news, the strikes are over. The SAG-AFTRA strike has ended. Woo, yay! Which means things can happen now.
Finally, we can get Marvel movie promo again, which I was certainly looking forward to.
Hooray!
Just what we needed. So, and that means we'll get Rings of Power promo again soon.
Oh, God. You know, I go months at a time without remembering that show exists.
And then...
Amen.
Anyway, so, in any event, that means Oriana's adaptation of the Silmarillion will now be on track, and we'll all be happy. Surely.
Look, I have told my manager that is one of my goals. It's that and the Power Broker. I'm sure the Power Broker is a little more feasible, and even that is probably not, but someday.
What to do is just you combine the two and things like that. So Robert Moses is Morgoth just sort of sitting around in his lair.
That was an analogy that we made in our evil episode. So
we will link back to that. So and things like that. And there's much to link. There is, of course, much to talk about today. It is we'll be getting a little more into that here in a second. There is, however, some news, kind of, to tell. We wish we were better, but nonetheless, news it is. So, Jared, please do take us away.
We try and share mostly good Tolkien news in our updates, but sometimes things are a little, how to put it, mixed. So, for instance, there's word that the famed favorite Oxford pub of Tolkien and his fellow Inklings, the Eagle and Child, will be reopened after some period of closure, as it has been purchased from St. John's College for such a purpose. But we were a little, let's say, surprised to learn that it was bought by Larry Ellison of Oracle, and given our feelings on Silicon Valley tech titans and all, okay. Allegedly, they'll modernize the space while celebrating its heritage. Typical enough, but please, no sports TV or anything like that. That's all we ask. However, an even more mixed bag is the news of a high-profile Tolkien exhibition happening in Rome to mark the 50th anniversary of his passing, staged at the National Gallery of Modern and Contemporary Art with a variety of memorabilia and general Tolkien ephemera. On the one hand, nice enough. On the other hand, as reported by Jason Horowitz for the New York Times, this is because Italy's fascist-friendly leader Giorgia Meloni is regrettably a big Tolkien fan, as has been reported numerous times in the past. And this is part of a wider push to celebrate more officially approved culture, if you will. Let's just say Horowitz's piece, which we'll link to in the show notes, is as good a depiction as any of the kind of fan mindsets we do not like. Thank you very much. So we're sorry for any listeners over there who are probably thinking, oh great, now people will figure I'm a Tolkien reader because I think their highest profile fans are great too. We feel your pain. We'll also provide another link with a Guardian story about more of the general context of this in the show notes.
Yeah.
God, I worry about that all the time myself. Even in America, it's like all of the worst people are like, oh, stand, men of the West, which I do want to get into that a little bit in this episode. And it's like, oh God, come on, don't. I'm not one of them, I promise. I'm one of the good ones.
Yeah, this is, I mean, there are other stories. I remember reading, Tolkien camps, Tolkien fascist-friendly camps, and things like that what's her name went to when she was a kid. And I'm like, this just great.
He
good
didn't
job.
Like you guys. He specifically did not like the fascists. He was not on board.
I know, man, famously called out Hitler as a, quote, ruddy little ignoramus. However, I was trying to rack my brain. I should have checked to see if he said anything specific about Mussolini, because if there was anything that was on that line, it'd be sort of like, I would dearly love to put that in their face. And certainly since Mussolini was, essentially, leader of Italy for 20 years, it's not like Tolkien didn't have a chance to have thoughts on him. So,
yeah. He could have had to put on the OG fascists.
Exactly. Great. So yes, that was a little like. I will say this much though: a couple of photos I saw from the exhibition seem to indicate that it was more like, hey, here's the Lord of the Rings pinball game and things like that, as opposed to anything official from the archives. So maybe. So the funniest bit in the story, if there was one to be had, was the guy who eventually admitted, "Yeah, we cleared the Picasso exhibition for this," and I'm like,
Sure.
Wow.
This is a vision. So maybe to talk about something happier, I have been to the Eagle and Child in Oxford, aka the Bird and Baby. This was during the Centenary Conference in 1992 when I visited Oxford, and a group of us went over there one time. It was perfectly fine. 1992 era pub. I have no idea what had changed since Tolkien's time, and what will be the thing about it now. But it was a nice experience. They had a couple of things there, and if it comes back, that's great. If they have the movies running silently 24/7, that's not great. I mean, we can, that's there are better things they can do with that. Hopefully, they do keep it as it is. Nice little touch. But so anyway, yes, there is not much other news otherwise. So for the moment, so we'll try and have better news next time for the start of this year.
We're going to make some.
Yeah, we'll have it happen. So, but in the meantime, well, it's time. It's time to conclude an epic trilogy. It is. We've been in the works now for a bit. Our own particular epic trilogy. It has been all that time. It is more or less Jared's turn to lead us into this discussion. So once again, Jared, please do take it away.
20 years.
No.
Every time.
No.
I know it comes up every time, but I'm just like Indiana Jones villain right now. Just like, oh my God, the wrong grail. Anyway, 20 years ago, it's 2003. As always, I'm eagerly checking the Lord of the Rings movie site, the Apple trailer site, thinking, here comes my movie. But it's different this time because it's 2003. The previous two movies were some of the biggest in recent years. So everyone else is excited too. Everyone is going, did you see the trailer? I'm so excited. I'm going to be there opening night. Oh my God. Lord of the Rings is everywhere. Everyone wants to see how it sticks the landing. In our Two Towers episode, I talked about coloring Disney character signatures to earn money for a ticket, but I got my movies mixed up. That's actually what I did for this one. Okay. For Two Towers, the family at church took me, and the condition of entering the theater was that we had to learn at least one spiritual lesson from the movie. But never mind. That's Two Towers. Well, anyway, Return of the King was a lot of firsts for me, though, because it was the first movie ticket I bought with my own money. It was the first snack I ever snuck into the theater. Gosh. It was my grandma's Chex Mix left over from Thanksgiving.
Wow.
First Annie Lennox song. I know, but first Annie Lennox. Yeah. First time rooting for a movie to win Oscars. And later it was my first online movie argument when I had a disagreement with someone over whether this or Pan's Labyrinth was the better film. And I was on the side of Pan's Labyrinth because this movie is unquestionably impressive. It does a lot. It does so much right. It sticks the landing, I guess, but it does so with kind of a big stumble. It has some severe flaws, but it's stunning in technical terms, and it has still, I think, some of the most impressive action sequences on film. But in 2003, I thought it was one of the greatest movies I'd ever seen.
Yep.
Did either of you think that?
Oh my God, Jared, I wrote a movie review for my high school newspaper. After seeing this, I worked so hard on it, and I was like the managing editor of the school paper at the time. So I cleared a full page, an entire page for my absolute nonsense. I do wish that I had a copy of it just to cringe at, because I know I went off on lore tangents and Grand. I know I did that because I also was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Even with, various quibbles. I just It was a genuinely epic experience for me in the way that, I recently saw Oppenheimer in IMAX, and that was an epic experience. And it's nice to have that kind of experience. Upon rewatch, this is I rewatch Fellowship of the Ring quite often. Two Towers less, Return of the King slightly more than Two Towers, but maybe now I just have screenwriter brain. Because, there's some really, really deep flaws in this. But the emotional moments still hit so hard. And we will talk about that more. Ned, how about you?
Well, as I like to say, each time we've done this episode, compared to you two earnest teenagers at the time, there I was being the responsible adult again, or things like that. So, of a sort. And, how old would I have been? 32? Yeah, 32. Okay. So, the run-up for this one, the experience in which I first saw it, is notable. So, of course, at this point, fully dyed in the wool. All my friends know, who weren't already aware that I was a big Tolkien fan who was into this. I remember things like when the one trailer they had, they only had the one, came out at the end of September, 3 months beforehand, and just going, on that. So as opposed to a teaser and then a separate one, they just had the one. I remember that the extended Two Towers came out like only about a month before the Return of the King debuted. And that was, of course, everyone's like, hey, Denethor, we get to see Denethor for the first time because he was introduced there, very retrospectively, like, you can sort of see that now. In fact, we see it all the time. Characters introduced in one form of the media popping up in later ones. We can think of other random examples, I'm sure. That was interesting in its own right. But when it came time for the premiere, so previous two times, I mentioned I was living in Orange County, got to see it at the big Newport Theater, and all that. And that's certainly where I did see it again on the first opening day. But it was not the first time I had seen the film on that opening day. In fact, I saw it twice within 24 hours. Because some people may remember, if you're in the One Ring Net viewers among us, or readers among us, which I know included you guys, that there were all sorts of big gatherings to watch the midnight things happening because, you might remember a discussion of this as well, that New Line, realizing they had an event on their hands, and these type of things are incredibly common now, basically set it up so you could do a back-to-back-to-back watch. Where it would be Return of the King at midnight, and then the previous two films before that at special screens or theaters scattered throughout. It wasn't universal. You had to find your local one, and Orange County had a local one. It was not the big Newport. It was a smaller theater in one of the complexes. And the further kick to this was that you would be seeing the extended versions on a big screen. So that was kind of the fix, too. It wasn't the theatrical, so that was the kind of thing to take it all in. So my friend Misty, as I mentioned in the Two Towers episodes, one of my two friends named Misty, same one that came. I remember, poor dear, she was sick as a dog, but she made it through. And this is the days before people would regularly wear masks out to do sort of things, if you could do that. So we got through it. I don't think I got sick. But I joined a One Ring Net bunch that had organized for this thing. We found each other. And I still have the commemorative T-shirt, which I remember they designed it, and then they were like, oh, you can't actually use the terms trademark, so it's all sort of fudged around. Trilogy theater showing or something like that. So, and there's a great mock map of Orange County done vaguely Tolkien map style at the back, indicating where everything was. And so like, okay, all right, that's pretty cool. That's classic fan culture right there, sure. And we all got there. There was at least one Gandalf fully dressed in the crowd. We saluted him. Glowing staff too. They went all out. Good job. And I remember everyone got a keepsake, and the keepsake was a little designed thing that was it was meant to look like rock carving. It obviously wasn't, but it did that. And the idea was they had taken one print each of the films, and they had chopped up like one frame each from it and put a random frame from each of the three films in it, sort of showcasing it. And it was luck what you got, what frames you got. I just remember like the Fellowship of the Ring one was sort of a side profile one of Dominic Monaghan's Mary. The Two Towers one was Haldir dying at Helm's Deep, and just like, and I'm like going, okay. I forget the Return of the King one. Unfortunately, I don't know where it's gone. I think I broke it some time ago, so oh well. But that was a nice little New Line thing that everyone got as a free keepsake. And they showed, and that was my edition, if you will. And they showed Fellowship, and everyone was pretty used to the extended Fellowship. But we could tell that not a lot of people had seen the extended Two Towers yet, because it was still new and fresh. So that actually landed well. All the bits that people hadn't seen in the first one. So things that certain jokes and things like that. And of course, the experience was just a rev up. It's like, here we go, and here we go, and here we go, and then boom, we get Return of the King, and swept away. And like Jared and Oriana said, there are issues I had, and we will get into that. But It was a hell of a way to wrap up what had been in a kind of in like almost hysterical in the best sort of way 3-4 years of this whole thing just happening. And then like within 24 hours I saw it again with crew at with my usual crew over at the big Newport, and then after that it was just a matter of just one waiting for the one you just see it come rolling in, and two just waiting on those awards. And boy, they swept the table, didn't they? But more on that too later. So there's that. But yeah, sort of thinking about the movie, yeah, it's one of those things where they did stick a landing. They did stick a landing, but they took some really odd steps to get there, didn't they?
Weird choices. Weird, kind of starting with the beginning of the movie where we are in, we're in Isengard, and then it's like, okay, Saruman's just there. Here's the Palantir. Bye.
Yeah.
Like, hold on a second.
Yeah, that bothers me. I brought this up, I think, in the Fellowship episode, where it's like, that stuff works in the book because Gandalf doesn't know the Palantir is there at all. And in the movie, it's like, he already knows because he had to explain for the audience what it was in the first movie. And now it's like, oh, sure, I'll just kind of leave this hugely powerful and valuable artifact just kind of under a blanket in my room while I'm sleeping. It's like, it's so stupid. But the actual opening of the movie, I think, is very solid, where it's like Smeagol and Deagol and
yes, that is
brutal murder,
amazing.
And then cut 500 years forward or whatever to Gollum hanging out with the hobbits, and you are instantly like reoriented in how like slimy and treacherous this character actually is, which is great. But then almost immediately after that, there's all this bizarre writing with Frodo being like, you know what, Gollum is my best friend. Friendship ended with Samwise. Now Gollum is my best friend. And it's bananas.
Is it like the biggest misstep of the movie, do you think? I was trying to think. Yes, I was watching it yesterday. I think it is maybe the most baffling choice that they could have made that they really, really did not need at all.
Yeah, it bogs things down because you have to spend all this time on Gollum setting Sam up and all of these things that would be so easy to, like, if Frodo spent 2 seconds thinking about it and investigating, he might be like, oh, no, this is actually fine. And then you get Frodo up to Shelob and there's a whole thing by himself. And then, I don't know, it feels like it drags so much more than it does in the book, where they're together and they get separated. And it's even more suspenseful because now it's like, oh God, now we split the party. So I think, the Frodo-Sam stuff is...
It makes Frodo look like a rube, which isn't great. And Sam's like emotional volatility and turning him into a rage rod just doesn't work with the Sam in the rest of the movie. Once it's him and Frodo again, and he is once again kind of like the good guy who is just like this solid as a rock kind of guy. And I understand the like desire to have Sam leave for some reason, but I think like you just had to let that go. You have to let that go.
It feels like you were talking about screenwriter brain. This feels like diseased screenwriter brain. Like you read in a book, you read in a screenwriting manual once, you've got to push characters to their breaking point all the time. And then you see who they really are or whatever, that, that kind of advice where it's like, no, you have to really feel how evil Gollum or the Ring or whatever is. You have to really feel it. It's like, no, I already got the idea. You don't need to do this. You are wasting time.
Like, this movie is 3.5 hours.
Yes.
Why are
and
we...
it doesn't earn every minute,
Yeah,
I will
just
say.
cut this out. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, your point, I think, is incredibly accurate, and it's something that you could say to their credit. I don't think Boyens and crew have ever really denied. I mean, they pretty much said that they wanted to introduce this conflict because it made sense to them screenwriting-wise, and to the point about, hey, you seem to have learned something in manual. My understanding, I forget the dude's name, is that some well-known script guy, sort of like the random lecturer, etc., things like this, one of, I'm sure, many, had come through and given a class some time ago that Boyens and Jackson, all that, this is like years prior, had attended. I think that's how they all maybe even met. And the idea was that he was good, let's put that in quotes, at setting this up as, here's a standard formula type thing. Well, the problem is if you learn a standard formula, then it becomes a standard formula. Yeah. And even though it's not that they were completely adhering to it, they decided to apply it to this particular balance of a story created by Tolkien. It's sort of like you force the issue too hard. And it is the moment that for most of us is sort of like, and I remember at the time just thinking, why? And it really made sense. And the part of the problem, too, is that especially after when I saw it the first time, having seen the first two movies again right beforehand, you were carried through it. And all of a sudden it's sort of like, but this doesn't matter. The actors are doing very well.
Yes.
Once again, all three of them. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden they're taking their characters in very different ways. Mm-hmm. That just doesn't fly. And one reason why it really doesn't fly is that in the book and the way it's set up, and Elijah Wood has been showing this, especially in the film version of The Two Towers, for what it's worth. The idea is sort of like, it's me in the ring and screw everyone else. And then having things like, oh, it's me in the ring and Gollum. It's like, no.
Yeah, no, he doesn't trust Gollum. And I think if you, in this situation, like you have the ring, you've seen it corrupt somebody else, you can feel it corrupting you, you would want to distance yourself, I think, which he kind of does in the book. He's like, I'm trusting Gollum to guide us, but I'm keeping an eye on him.
Yes.
Right.
And he's not trusting him when it comes to an argument with Sam. He's not taking that side. Mm-hmm, and I think like it's a mistake. And it blunts the emotional impact of much later on when Frodo is like, the ring is mine. That moment of betrayal hits so much harder in the book, where Sam is totally unprepared for it. You are unprepared for it. You've seen him getting worn down, and you're like, how's this go? Like, it's going to end well because this is not an author interested in keeping you unspoiled for things. It feels so much worse to have it happen right there. Like, we're so close. Everything's been going not very well, but like,
we're
together. We're here. We made it, Mr. Frodo. And Mr. Frodo's like, screw you. This is mine. Everything you did was for nothing. And to have that moment happen twice?
Yeah.
For no good reason aside from some screenwriting guru told you to do it.
Or whatever.
And I think they could have done a much better job of having Frodo, again, not trusting Gollum because he is a rube, which is what it feels like, but trusting him because A, he has no choice, and B, because he is very emotionally invested in Gollum's redemption, because he too knows he also is in need or will soon be in need of that redemption. And then you have the interesting sort of mirror of Gollum's final betrayal with Frodo's final betrayal, and redemption does not come for them, which is like cool and interesting. And I just feel like they, instead of spending all this time where Sam is just beating the crap out of Gollum and being a horrible person, we could have maybe deepened that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the scene, again, adaptations make choices. I don't think even if they'd done straightforwardly that they would necessarily have the scene I'm about to describe in an adaptation, even if they'd stuck with the basic things. It might have been there, it might not have been there. But even if it wasn't, the lack of the spirit of the scene that I talked about before, to me, one of the most crucial scenes in the entire book is when Frodo and Sam are resting right before they really get into the lair. Gollum comes back, and then there's that moment, which again would be very hard to convey in a film version because so much of it is from description from the narrator about that moment where Gollum might suddenly have just regrets about what's going on, and then Sam's like angry but not violent reaction.
Right.
Angry but not violent, very important to emphasize that, is the one that sort of sets him back on the path. And also the setup to that, sort of drawing on what was said earlier, where when they realize Gollum's disappeared and Sam's like, I don't like him sneaking off and all that, and Frodo's reaction is just simply, if he's false, he's false.
Yeah.
That sense of just sort of like almost like a warned regret, like, here we are type thing. And that's a different level of emotion. And I think these actors could have carried that. But
yes.
And with the direction and the writing, but that wasn't what they were given. Instead, we get jokes about Limbus crumbs.
Oh, God, I hate that. I also think, I don't want to spend too much more time on this because I think we are kind of in agreement about how another thing that it's doing that doesn't really work for me is that while this is happening, you're kind of like on the other end of things, we're kind of gearing up for the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. And I think it's a little much.
Yeah.
The tones are a little too close together, and having it be more like, the when it comes to Frodo and Sam, the ring quest is just kind of a war of attrition. They are just trying to live through it. And after a certain point, they aren't even trying to live through it. They're just trying to live to the end of it. And that kind of tone is so powerful, especially when you contrast it with what else is happening with like everybody's like, war, defend, glory, death, whatever, and the hobbits are just like, I just want a sip of water.
Yeah.
And having it be like, here's another fight between Sam and Gollum is like, come on, people are already fighting elsewhere. Can we just...
And that's what makes the scene, getting back to, I'll have a little more quick to say about the very opening scene with Smeagol and Deagle in a second, but that very first scene where we get Frodo and Sam and Gollum together hiding in that culvert, and there is something of that tone there in that thing, they're both Frodo and Sam seem very, very tired, things like this, enough left for the journey home, and it's sort of like they look at each other, and both Sean Astin and Elijah Wood, one, do it very well, and two, look wonderful. It's just they're beautifully shot, just one of those things, and it captures them. And that's the thing too. This is, stepping outside of it and talking about the things of filmmaking. I forget the exact order of things, but there was really a sense where they had to really try and nail the characters, at every stage of the journey across 3 films being filmed at the same time. That's a hard thing for anybody to do to get yourself in the mindset. Yeah. The fact that it lands more often than not, regardless, is something. I will say this before we should spend out and talk about other things. I agree. One important thing about that introductory sequence, the sheer audio quality as much as the visual quality of it, because when the ring just starts to come in and just literally starts warping everything, and the sense that we are in Smeagol's brain, Gollum's brain, for like a solid minute where there is no continuity, things just echo in and out. It's like being unstuck in time. It's sort of the sense that everything is happening all at once. Referencing a film maybe, but the idea is that you're sort of floating in and out. It's something that happened hundreds of years ago, might as well just happen yesterday. And I really like that. It's a sense of sort of like, this weird chaotic vision of what it might be like inside there, and that painful line in the best way about you forgetting his own name. I mean, that, making that word, I think it's a marvelous thing. Kudos for Circus, everybody, etc. But anyway, much more to talk about. So let's talk about other things. So getting back to the Palantir and Orthanc and all that. Yes, if you're thinking, wait a minute, don't you have Saruman? That's because that's in the extended version. Yeah. It is important to remember that in the theatrical version, there is no final scene with Saruman and Grima. And that's important because
literally just Gandalf goes, oh, well, Saruman's going to stay up there. Bye.
Jail for Saruman for 1,000 years.
Yes.
So it feels, watching the theatrical edition for the first time in forever, I was like, hang on, let me Google something. And given the timing of all the DVD releases, I feel like Return of the King is coming. They're like, we've already got the extended edition of Fellowship out. We know the Two Towers is coming. We can leave stuff out of this and it's okay, because we know we're going to get the extended edition no matter what. So,
but that was an issue. But that was an issue, though. You're right, because Christopher Lee, in particular, did not get it and was vocal about it.
Well, and he was like, I know it was probably for semi-selfish, but he was totally right, because, like, genuinely story-wise, it's so weird because Saruman was the villain.
He's
in
the
physical
bad guy
form.
of the Two Towers.
Fellowship and like the Two Towers. Really, like, we have spent all this time with this villain, and all of a sudden he is just not there anymore. Yeah. We've got other things to focus on, and it's like, you haven't...
If we had cut the Frodo and Sam stuff or rejiggered it, we would have had time for...
Yes.
And the scene with Saruman is like 5 minutes long. It's
and it could
like,
be...
It's short. It's okay.
Yeah. There's no reason.
And if you were like hyper fans like us, everybody in fandom knew about one particular image that had snuck away from the time of filming that showed somebody in white robes and a beard impaled on a spike on a wheel, and everyone had been wondering about it, and we're all assuming, well, this Shirley, what? And it still was left unanswered until the extended version came out. Although it was one of those things like, okay, clearly that must be at a certain point. But that was, it was something that it really screws things up. And arguably, it was the decision they made about where they cut the two towers when they did. More on that in a second, but more down the line for another scene. But yeah, it's one of it's infelicitous is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and talking about like all of the other things that this movie spends time on, there are like lots of sequences about the orc attacking Osgiliath and taking it over. That given, and I know that Ned, what you've said about them being like, well, we have the extended versions coming, so we know we can.
Yeah.
But it's still strange to me that they kept all of these assault on Osgiliath sequences in there, which take up like kind of a huge chunk of time.
Yeah, and we already got it in the two towers.
Exactly. We already did this. We didn't even really need it then because we're about to have the big battle. We don't need this Saving Private Ryan-esque battle. I wonder if that was part of it. I wonder if they were like, no, we just want to do a we want to have our Saving Private Ryan D-Day moment. And it also goes back to, Jared, what you were talking about, where the tonal dissonance between the Frodo and Sam story and the rest of the story is like, it's not exactly the creative team's I mean, it is ultimately, it is their fault, but it is kind of like it's in the source. Like,
it's a hard book to adapt.
This? Yeah,
it is very hard to adapt. I will say that. The thing with I do want to get to the good stuff at some point.
There's plenty of good stuff,
but this kind of brings up another thing that I wanted to get into, which is like Gondor, maybe, but also Denethor specifically.
Yes,
and we did have a whole episode about Denethor, and some of this might be repetitive, but watching it again this time, I was like, it almost has the same issue as the Bakshi version, where it's like, or Rankin Bass version, where this guy is just he's just like an old mean guy.
Yeah.
Like, why is he? There's no arc. There's no arc. There's no depth to him. He's just there to be an obstacle. Whereas in the book, as always, when we were talking about adaptations, it's like the book is not like holy text. It's okay to do things that deviate from it, but there's a reason the book works the way it does, and there are some ways you could make a movie work in the same way. But he's a smart guy. He's in charge. He's doing things that make total sense. They may be the wrong thing to do, but they make sense. You can see why somebody would make that call in this context. Like, evacuate the city of women and children, which happens in the book. In the movie, Denethor is just like, you know what? Everybody can die. I don't care. And it's not... He
starts there, too. He starts.
Yeah, he starts at that point of complete despair. Whereas in the book, he's like, he thinks things are... It's not going to work out no matter what, but he's going to try. And that doesn't even happen. He's just like, I'm going to sit here and eat the grossest tomato. And...
More on that.
Everybody else can just go screw themselves. And I don't think that's another thing that the movies do a little bit sometimes, where it's like, to show how good the main characters are, all the side characters just have to suck.
Which is...
you don't have to do that.
Well, there's like a weird thing, too, with Gandalf in particular. Can we talk about how the weirdness of Gandalf in this movie in particular?
Yes.
Where all of Gandalf and Aragorn's lines needed to be switched, where Aragorn is constantly reassuring Gandalf and being like, oh, no, like, there's the trailer famous line where,
what does your heart tell you?
What does your heart tell you? And it's like, hold on, this is
Gandalf is the one who's supposed to be keeping people's spirits up.
Yes.
That's his job.
And he doesn't do it really at all in this movie.
He's the one giving into despair. It's like, why
weird.
This is not a guy who's deciding what to do with the time that is given to him. This is a guy who's just marking the days on his cell.
You studied at the feet of Nienna, and you should know better. Like, it's just very weird, and it's something that did not like cross my mind until relatively recently, where I was like, yes.
That brings up some like Aragorn. This is the Return of the King. Okay, we know it's the Return of the King. It's to Aragorn, but it doesn't know who this king is.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's things like the Paths of the Dead, which in the book are like, you get a few paragraphs of Gimli talking about it kind of after the fact. There's also a sequence in it. It's very short. There's not a lot to it. The movie, and especially the extended edition, for some reason spends like an entire act on this. I don't know. There's so much of it. And in the book, what happens is he goes through the Paths of the Dead, he recruits the dead. There isn't this whole weird thing where the dead are like, who the hell are you? Which, I don't know what that's doing, but okay. They get out into the rest of Gondor. they get to the river with the Corsairs and the ships and all that. It kind of happens the same way as in the movie, but the dead don't actually kill anybody. Everybody's just so scared that they kill themselves.
Yeah. Hey.
But the most important thing that happens is that this is like, the dead are a one-time use weapon, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they get used to take the ships. They don't come to Minas Tirith. What happens is Aragorn demonstrates his ability to lead people and build a coalition and gather reinforcements from the humans in Gondor and take them to the city to, help defend it. And that's really important. Like, that's what a king should be doing. Whereas in the movie, it's just like, this is the guy with the nuke. And that's why he gets to be king.
And the sword.
You get a lot, and the sword. And you get, in the book, which I think works so much more for the way this story is thinking about power and the use of power, is he doesn't even really want to be in the city for the most part, because he doesn't want to take power through
like a military junta.
Yeah, he doesn't want to look like he's in charge. He wants people to accept him on their own.
Yes.
If they want, and the movie is not interested in that, and I think that's a huge missed opportunity. And it's a misunderstanding of what the Return of the King means for Gondor.
Yes.
That was my rant. Anybody else have Aragorn thoughts?
Well, there are plenty of thoughts to be had. I mean, part of the issue too is that Aragorn's story, the all of a sudden a lot of things need to be resolved from the previous films, or incorporated in what's going on.
Arwen.
In a sec. And some things have to be sort of brought up again. So, for instance, there's the whole bit. Frankly, I love some of it. In Edoras early on when they're having a little party, but when Éowyn and Theoden are talking, and Theoden's sort of like, well, it really wasn't me. We have to bring up the fact that, it was Aragorn who saved everybody at Helm's Deep. It's like in the movie version, and that sort of thing. But then we've also got the whole idea of that, having the Chekhov's gun approach in the movies of what to do with the sword that was broken, which of course is not an issue in the book because he gets it out of the gate back in Fellowship. And the weird sort of who knows how many reshoots put it all together, the idea of bringing back Figwit one more time to give a line to Arwen there. Hi, Figwit.
That's right.
See, and her vision and all that. Oh, I had a kid? This changes everything. And I'm I came a little late in the game.
Motherhood is why I live.
Dude.
Also, the Arwen stuff where it's like, she's dying because the ring is like, there's too much evil, I'm dying.
Is that where the goddamn rings of power, the elves are dying thing came from?
1000%. They are pulling it from this. It's so stupid. And Elrond, when he shows up to bring the sword to Aragorn, how does he get there, by the way? How does he get there? That's like 1,000 miles away.
It's so far.
It's so far. And he's like, Arwen is dying, like, her life is tied to the fate of the ring or whatever. And it's like, so is everybody else's. Everybody else's life is tied to...
What does that even mean?
Like, literally, she's just getting weak and pale from too much evil in the world. And, like, that's a vibe sometimes. I get it. Like, I've been there.
We have a twin bed in our, like, living room / office space because sometimes I like to just lie down during work hours.
Who could blame you?
I get it. I do get it, but it is such a bizarre choice, and it's just like, well, we have Liv under contract, so we've got to get her in the movie somehow.
Remember, she was third billed, so
yeah. Like, I know, like, what are you going to do with Arwen? She doesn't do anything in the book. She makes him a banner. That's cool. That's nice. There's not much story to her, but this is not the right move.
Well, let's be fair here. We've talked about a lot of things that have irked us.
Yes.
The good stuff.
Yes.
Let's talk about some good stuff.
My emotions.
Technically, this movie is so impressive.
It really is. Yeah,
I was watching it and going, like, practical effects.
Oh my God.
Like, the miniatures, everything. It's still
gorgeous.
20 years later. It looks better than whatever the last Marvel movie I saw where it was all just pixels.
Yep.
I think
it's so impressive.
Yeah, the first big moment, the first big new location moment that we get in the film, because initially we're in small places, or we're in that are just one and done, like the culvert at the beginning, or we're back to Isengard briefly or Edoras briefly, is of course where we get the wonderful ride in, and boom, there is Minas Tirith for the first time from the front, from the front, as opposed to the side shot in the first
King
film.
Howard Shore coming through too, helping us. Like, we didn't necessarily need more, but like the marrying of the score and that shot is just like, what?
Yeah,
that and the beacons sequence.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll
I
get to
don't
that.
get
Hold
the
on,
timing
hold
on that
Let's-
because
we'll
it's
get to
overnight.
that.
What's with that?
See, that's like what's great about that moment of filmmaking is it doesn't. I hate the storytelling choice actually of Pippin having to do it on his own.
Like Denethor's not going to call for help.
Yeah,
what is that?
I hate that because like, oh my god, how much better is it if Denethor calls for help and then thinks they aren't coming? But whatever, because I still like my heart sings when they're fucking being lit.
The
It's
theme
amazing.
of Gondor just
Yes.
like going nuts on the orchestra
I'm
and
screaming, I'm crying.
Yeah. Oh, it is so powerful.
All right. Well,
Love
since
it.
we are getting to that, yes, it is truly it's the moment like in most recent rewatch. I'm asking me, it's like, oh, did they do the beacon scene? And I'm like, yeah, rewind. Do the beacon scene again. So it is the one that sort of ties through, and rightly, it is a film qua film moment that needs to be celebrated for what it is. And to back up about the theme, this again is the cleverness of having somebody fully commit like Shore did the entire time. Is that we do get the Gondor theme very briefly in Fellowship a couple of times, and very quietly.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like it's there, but you don't quite know it's there. And so when it finally comes in, when you get it to Minas Tirith, it's sort of like, okay, we're getting some big moments here. And then when we get the beacons, okay, the one moment about the beacons that always throws me. Believe me, it looks so cool. No one will ever deny it. It is a way to take the basic idea from Tolkien, amp it up, and just turn it into it's a majestic combination of the music, the effects, New Zealand's landscape. Let's be fair, it's all there in one piece. Sort of like, oh, okay, now I get why they made these films. I can't get over the time zone problem.
No, that's right. Yeah. No. I was trying to explain. My partner hasn't read the books, and I was trying to explain, like, no, they're not really this far apart. This is just Peter Jackson being like, because it's not that way in the book, but it's not that way in the book because they're not that far apart, because you can't ride a horse that fast.
No.
And it's more like the beacons should be a lot more like the now all of China knows you're here bit from Mulan, where you see it just like bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
All in one night. And there's none of this, well, we're traveling cross-continental for this. It's so...
Yeah. It's sort of like, oh, we're in the daylight.
We're taking the Amtrak Empire Builder. Like,
yeah.
Boy, but it is one of those little skippy moments. But what can you do and all that? But yeah, getting back to our introduction to Minas Tirith as a whole, I think that whole sequence, just the way it shows, we get a sense of, whoa, okay, this is what the city is like, and the slow build up, and we see those shots around the big miniatures, the close-ups of the actual city set shots, which are just absolutely lovely. Truly, some of the best set work they did on the entire film. All those little details they packed in, which is just insane and wonderful. And just moving on up, the way we sort of swoop into it, we go up the staircase, that big dun-dun-dun
the camera
thing.
Rising to frame the White Tower as Gandalf rides up into the Citadel.
Have you ever seen the Spike of Pearl and Silver?
And then the reverse shot where you see Pippin and Gandalf walking in, and it's Mordor right there, just going nuts in the background. You're just in Mordor. It's sort of like,
good.
It's sort of like, okay, all right, everything makes sense. You are placed in the right spot and for the right thing, and that is the thing too. I mean, whatever else about these films, and I've thought about this ever since the films came out. Is like, they nailed kind of what it looks like to me in general. Sort of like, this is it. I mean, yes, quibble over details, but it's like, this is the setting. This is how the river goes. This is where the mountains are. This is where yes, you've got it. And now let's move to, even though they're, you could argue, we just talked about how Denethor on the one hand doesn't work, but let's flip it around because he's the most major new actor introduced in all these films, John Noble as a whole. I think
great as the
it's not the book character, but it's John Noble doing a hell of a job with this character.
Like, why I wish they had given him more.
Like, right? Because he can't do it.
Yes. He can take you from the haughty, good, but like fundamentally good-hearted and maybe not hopeful, but like, we're here and we're going to do this and we're going to try, to like utter despair and horror. Like, he can do that. I got to interview John Noble, but not for, he did a guest star role on The Good Wife, and I got to interview him for it. And I didn't really bring up Lord of the Rings because I was like, I have to be a professional, and that's like all he gets, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. You could have brought up Fringe, but...
I did, because he was so good on Fringe, too, incidentally. Shout out to Fringe.
My two favorite moments of Noble in the role would be, even in that introductory scene we get with him, is that, and it's helped by the camera shot, where the part of him that is truly arrogant and sort of like, which is very Denethor in the book, too, where he stands, the rule of Gondor is mine and no others. And it's sort of like, okay, all right, this lands. I can see that. I can see Book Denethor being pushed to that point, especially, although it is clunky, the line, authority's not going to deny the return of the king. It's sort of
they said it. They said the
have
name
we
of the
won all the
king.
Star Wars? Gandalf, have we won all the Star Wars now?
That's the return of the king.
little much.
Nudging my date. That's the return.
Yeah. The other one, to give another actor his due, and I remember you were saying in the Two Towers episode, and I would agree with this, that David Wenham actually lands better in Return of the King comparatively than this.
100%.
Yes.
Is easily the confrontation scene before Faramir rides out to face death. And just that the way the two actors are playing off each other, just so, and the way they're shot and things like this, and it's the amount of perfect when Denethor goes, yes, I wish that. And I still remember first time I saw it, the entire theater was just like, oh God.
Man, crushing.
So brutal. And it's the way he delivers the line as kind of a whisper, like it's not quite meant to be heard. It's great.
It's like you're forced into a confession. So I mean, there's more. There's another further scene, the extended version, etc. But really, the scene in the theatrical version is the version. It is the one that I think at that moment really captures as best as one can that dynamic of the three characters, counting the absent Boromir, just finally played out to the full, and just sort of like this way. It's sort of like, these are the regrets I have to live with, and you're not the one I wanted here, honestly. So it's like,
I think that the scene in the extended, I think, does too much with him having like this vision of Boromir and being like, I'm so excited, and Faramir being like, oh, for me, and Denethor being like, no, it's too much. It's a little camp. I don't
selling past the clothes, man.
Yeah, you don't need to do that. I think the theatrical one cuts it right.
Just having it be there. So, and there is a comment John Noble does say, by the way, in the commentary that he gave for Return of the King. Maybe Return of the King, it might have been for Two Towers, because of course he has a scene there and he did some commentary for that one. And this is something that I think was his own interpretation rather than anything canonical from the books. But he mentioned that his idea of playing Denethor, as for the top of it, actors find their motivation, but I thought this was a reasonable way to look at it, was that he was like acting as the idea that Boromir reminds Denethor more of him, whereas Faramir reminds him more of his dead wife.
Yeah, the instant he said that in the commentary, I was like, oh, of course. And I have a hard time remembering that that's not actually...
Not canonical, yeah.
It
just is
riff on
it. It's a sign of a really smart actor looking like, what have we got? Oh, here's a way to do it, because that gives the actor something to work with for a role and being able to. So he was the one new introduction to this whole thing, and I thought did it very, very well. The beacon scene, indeed. I love little details of bits throughout Minas Tirith that we get. I mean, the evening shot where we've got Gandalf, Pippin talking, and just sort of like, I like the atmosphere of that, even if Gandalf is almost saying it's like, it's the deep breath before the plunge, but it feels like the deep breath before the plunge. The setting is right, and then we get this wonderful intertwined thing where we do get the approach to Minas Morgul. We do get that wonderful piece of design, shifting back to over there. And I was like what John Howe said, the idea was like, clamps on teeth was his vision for how he designed Minas Morgul, which I thought was really good.
It's fantastic the way, because, I mean, if you've only seen the movies, you may not know that Minas Morgul is like the sister city of Minas Tirith that has been taken over by Sauron and corrupted, and now is the abode of the ring wraiths and all that. And that comes across subliminally in the movies, where it's got, like, it's a white city, but it has these the clamps of like the spikes all over it, and I think this is might as well segue into visual design here. We get the most of Mordor in this movie that we ever get, and I love going back to our episode on evil. I guess and I think John Howe talks about this in the commentary or something, but it's a repetition of motifs constantly. Sauron has no creativity really. It's just like it's all spikes. It's all spikes. I have no other ideas.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a visual, to me, it's also a visual representation of how, in the Silmarillion, it describes like Morgoth's music that he makes to corrupt the world. It's just like braying on a few horns.
Yep.
And that's what Mordor looks like, and it's so good. Like it looks fantastic, but it's also so much thought behind how it looks.
Yeah, and I also love how in that scene where it's the Great Signal, which is indicated as such in the book.
The sky beam.
Yeah, I'm not wild about that.
No, but it's very funny.
I love how it starts, that hush in the sound design when the city just kind of takes a deep breath and then this light goes up, but then the way it just kind of hangs in the sky, it's just like a little pencil of light. It's very silly looking to me. I'm not but up to that point, it's great.
Yeah, but it is all about the sound design. It is a wonderful moment. I mean, I'm trying to think in terms of, let's say, epic fantasy filmmaking moment. Perhaps the closest comparison to it I can think of is that wonderful sort of pullback, hush, silent moment in recent terms is Star Wars: The Last Jedi, where the big hyperspeed, the holdo maneuver through the ship, and then everything's sort of like quiet for a second, then it's like boom after. It's that same effect. Sure. But this, of course, came first. It's a lovely detail. Let's sort of shifting back before we get into the big battle, shall we say. Let's take a quick look to talk more about sequences involving the Rohirrim, because that's really is the other major thing and the setups for that, because we get a lot with that. So we do get Dun Harrow. I think it's lovely to see Dun Harrow in a particular way. I thought that was really nicely done.
The standing stones, it's great.
The stones, just a brief hint of the Pukul men. You don't need to explain it. It's there, though. It's a nice touch to see them. I think a lovely bit of just design of them up there on the high shelf. We do get a fair amount of, we get Elrond coming in as sort of like, but we do get a fair amount of other things too, like, Mary's really wanting to go to war. Éowyn and Éomer have the back and forth on that. She's obviously wrestling with what she wants to do. I really do like, again, shout out once again, Miranda Otto, Carl Urban, and Bernard Hill. I think
Bernard
they all
Hill,
are doing...
Okay, so the Theoden Éowyn relationship is, like, so well done, I think, in this, in both The Two Towers and Return of the King, but particularly here, like, they're so good. I want Bernard Hill to, like, I also want to be his sister daughter or whatever, I like just the tenderness. Uncle, please,
Bernard Hill.
Right, like the tenderness with which he, lays this responsibility. He loves her so much.
That wonderful sunrise scene. I have given instruction. That whole sequence is so deftly handled.
And watching him watch her be upset.
Yes.
It's so good. I will say I'm not wild about how the movie handles their goodbye, because I feel like in the book, when Mary crawls over to Theoden and Theoden is like, tell Éowyn,
right,
whatever he says, I can't remember. Tell her I love her. I don't know what he says. And Mary starts to say, she's right here, and Theoden dies. And that's it. They never get goodbye. And it's I'm getting a little like teary just talking about it. It's so sad, and having them get to say goodbye in the movie is like
a little Hollywoody.
Like, it's fine, I guess, but that tragedy is like, it's missing, and I don't know. I wish that was there.
Yeah,
I like it when people don't get to say goodbye.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, that's an important thing, and that's something, let's be fair, Tolkien would have known about all too well. But the whole tie up with that, I do think it is important. Again, it's the movie overforces it, but from the idea of the book, when Éowyn and Aragorn have to have essentially her goodbye scene to him, because she thinks he's going to death in the Pass of the Dead and all that, and the movie has to treat it a little differently. But I think the scene is pretty well done. I almost think I think Miranda's maybe even doing a bit better than Viggo in that scene, because Viggo's more sort of like, Éowyn, I don't know, and she's the one going like, let me give you my heart.
Let me love you.
Yeah, I feel like, wasn't it said somewhere by one of them, but I feel like this movie was written by Aragorn and Éowyn shippers. It has that vibe to me.
It has a bit of that vibe.
Like, they want their emotional connection to be there.
Yeah. Why else cut the Éowyn and Faramir stuff, like, completely,
Yeah. Oh, that was a mistake.
Huge mistake.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's not essential, but, like, it's nice.
Let's see, and maybe some other bits too. I'll get back to one Éowyn moment in particular. Again, building up to the big battle here, but we do get, of course, John Rhys Davies and Orlando Bloom still doing their thing. And
they're also there.
And we do get buddy moments. Just where do you think you're going? Oh, have you not heard of the stubbornness of dwarves? It's like, thanks, you guys. Although my favorite Legolas moment is a little bit earlier. Oh well, one of my favorite Aragorn moments. Let's face it, Aragorn Burner Hill moments. Beacons of Gondor lit. Gondor goes for aid. Pause. Yeah. Pause. Rohan will answer. Theater went nuts first time I saw it. Everyone's like, yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
That was a great moment. However, the funny Edoras moment still to my mind is when Pippin's about to do his Palantir thing and Aragorn's looking around and Aragorn's stepping out on the terrace. And then Legolas is there. The stars are veiled. Something stirs. You get a shot. And then they exchange a look. And my caption for that look is after Legolas says this stuff, is looking over, it's like, do you buy that? Am I making sense? It's like,
you see, the stars are veiled. You see it too, right? The stars are veiled.
And Aragorn's just like, Jesus, elves.
Oh, I see. I was like saying the stars are veiled in the background. You see stars.
Yeah. Why are
those stars are veiled? These aren't.
No, I swear, dude, I saw a veil. Okay, like I'm not making this up.
Sorry, Orlando, it wasn't your fault.
Yeah, he's trying so hard. Bless his heart.
It's really not his fault at all.
Not his fault. One of the best moments, though, one of the smartest things they did in terms of the adaptation is, well, the whole gearing up, I think, of Rohan going to war is, I think, very well done. Sometimes even as simple as the shots of, like, the one guy hammering the bell. I do think the whole intense farewell scene where Gandalf and Pippin have to just get out of there. Yeah. And just sort of like this blunt, I don't know what's going to happen, boom, we're off moment. It's sort of like, that's pretty good. They did shoot that more tearily. There is an alternate take on that. And I'm like, nah, they needed it more crisp. This was the right choice. But my favorite thing easily has to be that it's obvious it's Éowyn. It's obvious it's Éowyn, and Merry is not surprised by the time they get to the Pelennor fields.
Yeah, because you can't, like, in a book, sure, you can kind of, but, like, in a movie, you can't obscure the fact, like, you cast actors who have very distinctive,
recognizable,
beautiful
lower jaws.
Faces. Yeah.
And voices.
And eyes, like, it's all in the eyes, too. Yeah. Like, you can recognize people by their eyes, for sure.
Yeah.
I just like the idea, she's sort of gearing up and tagging along. So, okay, well, before we get to the big battle, the other big thing maybe happening right before it I'd like to talk more about is whatever else from the setup, how are the things like this? When we get to Shelob's lair and we get to Shelob.
I still can't, there's parts that I can't look at. I'm just like, this is... When
she emerges from the, like, after Frodo has escaped, I cannot handle that.
Oh, God. I remember sitting in the theater when he's walking down the narrow pass, and she's just like looming over him, and the theater was just like, collectively went.
I think I actually genuinely screamed in the theater when
they did
when she popped back out. Even though, like, I'd read the books like twice at that point at least. Like, I knew what was going to happen.
But it's staged so like this, like it's so good, and
there's those Peter Jackson horror roots.
Yeah, the books have a little more, the sequence in Shelob's lair is a little harder to follow, like, geographically.
Impossible for me. So, I could not.
Yeah, but having it, visually, she's chasing him, she's almost got him, and then he's out, and then all of a sudden, she has many exits from her lair. There she is. Mm-hmm. It's just,
and just the way she comes out. Yeah, you're right. I can feel that first screening, that midnight screening thing that comes out. Everyone in the theater, and then you're as you're just describing the whole her like hovering above him, and he clearly doesn't know she's there, and you're just like everyone's going, and then that brief cut when the stinger comes down and pulls back, and everyone
I hate that,
and then also again, and then it was just like.
Just really quickly, he's like 3 feet tall. That thing would have just skewered him. Yeah. Like, he's dead. He's dead.
Fair.
But it's so good.
Yeah, right? Like, the emotion is so true that, like, I can't actually quibble. Like,
yeah, and the sound design of Shelob, where when she's fighting Sam, and he's, like, up against the stone, and her mandibles are, like, clacking together. Oh, I hate that. I mean, it's so good. I wouldn't hate it if it wasn't so. It's so visceral. It's just like you know exactly what it would feel like to be touching her. Yeah,
and you can see like there's like growths on her too. Like, incredible character design. Although, so Steve, my husband was watching it with me, and he was making the assertion that thinner, like spiders with like really thin legs, are scarier, and I think he's probably right. But I would not exchange this character design for any other, personally.
Yeah, it's hard to... I think thinner legs wouldn't work as well, maybe on screen, especially in the dark. It's a little harder to see her.
Yep.
But...
Yeah, having it more sort of stand out like this, and just other little bits of it too, like all the inevitably you think of something like Alien, the franchise, with all this tied up things and the goop and everything everywhere, but it still works. It's still spiderwebby type stuff. I do love many little moments throughout. The Howard Shore's really creepy theme, which Jackson said he specifically asked Cronenberg to do something along his lines of the work for The Fly, and I thought good comparison. I do love it's not really the book. I do love the brief moment and how it's staged and done, where Frodo falls and then wakes, and it's Galadriel in the vision there, and how that sort of flows together. It's pushing a thing, but I think it's staged very well, especially how she sort of seems to bring him
Lift
back
him
up and
hoist
him.
him.
Yeah. I think that's really, I think there's just a nice little touch, nicely done. Even Gollum's little rhyme. Oh, in a web, only to be eaten.
Look, if I were the minion of a giant spider, I'd be doing that.
Right.
And all that. So, but anyway, we'll get to Cirith Ungol and that in a bit. But let's shift back to the battle scene. But let's get back to Minas Tirith. Let's talk about it. Pippin's song and that whole sequence. You don't like it?
No, I do like it.
Yeah, I cried buckets.
It's so good. I think it would land better if we hadn't had so much Osgiliath stuff already. It's like we're going back there. It's a little like, do we have to? And not in the way where you're supposed to feel the weariness of the soldiers. It's just like, I don't want to go there. I'm done.
I'm tired. I'm tired of this. Like we've already seen like Faramir go up against these exact people like three or four times.
This battle so much.
You've kind of,
we don't need to.
And yet it's still so effective. I'm impressed.
You can argue that by not showing what happens is precisely why the scene lands so well. I mean, If we had followed them into the battle, then it would. Oh God, I think it works really well on its own. It's just
it could have been better. It would have been like, and also we would have just saved some time. Like, again, you don't. Although, maybe it was the studio pushing like more action, do Saving Private Ryan, like with orcs, just,
So, but still, just dark places. So, and Billy Boyd's got a lovely voice, it must be said. So, okay, battle time. All right, the big siege begins. And now we have to just talk about it in terms of, okay, we're staging a big ass scene here that's even bigger than Helm's Deep, and how you're doing that and all the rest of it. So, we tended to get a little tired, I seem to remember talking about last time, of Helm's Deep. But what'd you think about the whole extended Siege of Minas Tirith and everything that involved with it? What's your reads?
I still think it's great, especially because it's a little Helm's Deep core in for a bit. Like you've got here come the orcs. You've got the siege towers. That's great. Like the shots of them, like the distant shots of them rolling towards the city, it's like building suspense is fantastic. Like that's all going on. It's fine. But then when you get to things like, they start bombarding the city with like heads, or when they actually start using stones and the city is crumbling and the city starts throwing bits of itself back as ammunition, it's so good. And then when the Nazgul come and you're just like watching them, and it's so great because they're so petty about it. They're just like, I'm going to snatch this guy and drop him. And that is, it's
fuck you specifically.
It's like darkly funny in a way, but it's also terrifying because the way the camera swoops with them, you're like, assaulting the city yourself. It's so well shot.
It's just that the whole edit of someone coming in. That's another case. The Howard Shore music goes into overdrive. The way it's sort of the camera just swoops in behind it. It's like here come the angels of death, and you're down. Yeah. You're just that's it for you. So okay. So Oriana, what were your thoughts on Grand? Since you apparently had them for your high school newspaper.
I was like, I know what Grand is a reference to.
It's the hammer of the underworld.
Actually, I was that kind of 16-year-old. I'm so sorry, everyone.
I was too. I love Grand because it's great design and everything. But the way when it breaks, it's battering the gates, and Gandalf is like, no matter what comes through, hold your ground. And then instantly we cut to these giant trolls just coming in and blasting everybody away with hammers. It's
armored trolls too.
And you've never seen them before, so it's a very like, oh shit. Yeah. No, this is really bad. This isn't just orcs. We've never seen these before.
Yeah. Oh, okay, this is like backing up very slightly, but you know what moment I absolutely still love 20 years later is when the, Minas Tirith siege, or when the towers are launching bits of stone back, and there's one coming for whatever that ugly
the chief lead orc.
That
He's named
guy.
Gothmog in the script.
And he just steps slightly out of the so casually.
Yeah, it's just kind of to the side.
I love that moment.
And then spits on it.
Yes,
it's fantastic.
It's so good, so good.
It's a nothing role basically. You just needed to have a focus of who's your commander, him. And in the theatrical version, we don't even see how he dies. That only happens in the extended version. It's sort of
that's right.
It's
right.
You're just sort of okay, if you're going to introduce a focal vire, someone who's Lurtz-like, and then you're going to kill him off. Don't
it kind of dropped that.
Yeah, he also really proves the effectiveness of practical effects, because looking at the orcs in this movie and then remembering how they were in The Hobbit, they're just kind of weightless, they're nothing. But here it's like, this is a guy, he's swinging something at you, and it's so effective.
And he looks like his face still is just like,
he looks like he would bite you. I mean,
he really did. So one of the ultimate choices that they made, which was again like they made with Helm's Deep, is that, of course, and we already referenced it, they actually fully break in and take into the city. So in the same way that Helm's Deep mostly fell in the movie version, and what we have here is that we lack. Okay, again, adaptations make choices. I still regret to this day that the big Gandalf Nazgul Witch King confrontation sequence doesn't happen quite the way it should, to my mind.
Yeah, I don't. Thank God it's not in the theatrical.
Yeah, it's not in the theatrical. The extended version is its own thing.
I think it's bad in the extended. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't. I have my problems with it there as well. But it's sort of like It is such an iconic moment in the book. It is the one-on-one face down. It's another brief pause. It's sort of like the gates are open, it's about to go down, and then Rohan arrives. Instead, it's sort of like we get other things, which still work. But it's like,
it's also it's so good in the book because this is the first time you've seen a ring wraith without their hood, and there's nothing there, and for some reason, just that, oh my god, it makes it so much creepier, and I don't know if that works as well in a movie. It's hard to say, but I think it'd be really
it's
good.
hard. What decisions can be made. So there it is. So, but hey, let's talk about it. Even in the theatrical, it still works. You hear the horns and over the hill.
So good. Yeah.
Damn.
I have nothing wrong with the Rite of the Rohirrim and the charge. No notes.
It's fantastic. And the Mumakil stuff.
I have to admit,
great.
I did not know. I don't know if there's just something wrong with my hearing and has been for 20 years. I did not know the Rohirrim were screaming death. I just thought they were yelling.
Nope. Death.
I can't believe because I watch everything with the captions on now. It's just like, that's just where we're at in life. And it's enriched my experience so much.
It is an interesting case, of course, transposing from the book, and again, interesting adaptational choice. Whereas, of course, that charge about death is when Éomer thinks Éowyn is dead, and is leading
and
the
he's
nuke
like,
charge.
screw it all.
Yeah.
We're burning this whole thing down.
Pure nihilism. Here, it's more sort of like we are the avenging bastards, and we're just going to do this. And it's paced so well, and that's the way the charge ramps up, and then everything just sort of happens, and the music, the theme comes in. But then, as you're right,
the wall of the elephants.
Everything pauses, and then all of a sudden the sound drops away again. You hear this chant in the background. They're looking off towards some of your and here they come.
And everyone's faces when they see them, perfect.
And the fact that they blow a horn too before they charge, we're getting that the evil Rohirrim. And I will every time I'm just like, this horn that they blow is so cool.
Yes.
It's so much cooler than any other horn in the movies except the Helm's Deep one. Just this long, winding signal. Anyway, along with that, these movies really have that early 2000s post 9/11 Islamophobia thing happening.
Bruh.
Which I don't like. I know there's the books are kind of that way too. It's a little bit different in the movies. Maybe a lot different in the movies.
You see, you are confronted with the actual images of brown people who are the enemy and the savage
and there's
enemy.
The savages, and there's nothing done to mitigate that or complicate it. It's just no, they're the bad guys. And the fact this didn't used to bother me because I just wasn't thinking about it, and I think I brought this up in maybe the other two movie episodes as well. The fact that the screenplay consistently conflates the world of men with Gondor, white people, all that is so gross.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whereas the books don't do that. They're like, no, these are people. They're just fighting on the wrong side.
Right.
Yeah.
We can maybe do something about that. But the movies are like, no, the world of men will come crashing down if the white people are dead. And it's so disgusting. Why is that the move? I mean, I know why it is, but like...
it's because of 2003. And
I knew it was written and filmed before 9/11.
Yeah.
So it was there before.
But we're certainly not going to make an effort to
we're not going to try to fix it.
Change anything about it.
Yeah, and I know that probably would have involved some massive and expensive reshoots.
I don't even know. Yeah, what do you even do
but also, nobody,
at that point?
I don't think...
And they were so locked into a schedule, too, at that time. I mean,
is it some ADR?
Like that, too? Famously, in the behind-the-scenes documentary, like, final scenes were being shot, 2-3 days before the official Wellington premiere. You know, it was down to the wire. It was kind of crazy, so...
And that feeds into the whole stand men of the West thing, which came up in sermon illustrations in my church at the time, and not in a good. There's no really good way to do it, but not in a good way.
It doesn't sound like that at all.
Yeah, it was like, we're facing the hordes of Islam or something. Stand men of the West. I was like, this is.
I don't like this.
This is a little weird, and I was too young and silly at the time to understand the problems. I do now. But
true, yeah, no lie, and I'm not minimizing that. But I will say this: even though we didn't get the Gandalf Lord of the Nazgul true confrontation moment, we did get the Eowyn Lord of the Nazgul transformation moment, confrontation moment. I mean,
I still love it too. I still every time. I'm just like, oh yeah,
I do. I do miss a little bit upon rewatching it. How in the book she's like, "I'm not a man," and the Witch King is actually kind of like, "Oh shit!" Like for a sec, he's like, "Wait, is that in the rules? Like, let me check the book really fast." Like,
did I just get airbutted? Like,
yeah. And I know you don't necessarily have time for that in the movie. It's fine, but I kind of wish that was that moment of like, I thought I was invulnerable. I might not be.
Yeah, I have been hoisted by my own, etc.
Yeah, believed his own hype.
Airbud. There's no rule that says a girl can't kill the Witch King.
Nope.
I'm looking at the rule book right now. I don't see it.
And to be fair, Mary got in the first stab, just as it should. So,
a man, huh? We got to give credit,
but not a human.
Ooh.
So I will say I love the bit in the behind the scenes making about how the mace kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right,
and it's absurd,
That's
but
so
it works.
funny.
I love it.
I do like thinking during that scene, like, oh yeah, I would avoid that really easily. It's like, no problem.
R.I.P. to everybody else, but I'm different.
Basically.
Dear me. So, and then we get the count is still going on. Like Gimli and Legolas arrive. And Aragorn. And the scrubbing bubbles of the dead, as my friends called the army of the dead.
Looks so
they
bad.
through like scrubbing bubbles.
It's like the only effect that doesn't quite.
It doesn't hold, and I think it's because it's so. There's no way to make it realistic. There's no way it's going to look good. So it is just kind of like, swarm of green bubbles. Like it's not.
Might as well be. I do like when they take down the one Mumak. That's pretty good.
That is good. That like is, in the background. Yeah, that's good.
I love it's just a casual background shot.
That's why it's good. I was watching, I don't know, like a YouTube video or something where someone was talking about like the comedy of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and like he made the observation that things are funny when they're small, and I was like, oh my god, that's it. Like, that's just a delightful thing. When you see it off in the distance, it's funny.
Yeah.
Same with that's why, like, the Nazgul dropping the people is kind of horribly funny in a way, because it's so tiny.
You just a little clunk.
Yeah.
I mean, to quote Tracy Jordan, comedy lives in the wide shot.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and yes, we get Legolas versus the Mumak. Anyway,
you know what's funny about that is, like, his interaction with the actual Mumak is okay, I think. Like, it's an inventive thing, but it's the trunk slide that just, like, is like, oh, this is so silly.
And it still only counts as one.
Yeah.
God.
I so many problems with Gimli as written in the movies. I know we've been over this. They don't go away in this movie.
They don't go away. I mean, my favorite random Gimli moment is actually afterwards, where they're all having essentially the Council of War in the throne room, and there's Gimli on the steward's chair. I'm like, look, Gondor hasn't fallen that far apart that someone would have said something to him.
I don't think he wouldn't have
I don't see it. We wouldn't have done it. He was no. This Gimli, yes. Book Gimli, no. So, anyway, we'll get to the Black Gate in a second, but let's heave on and back over to Mordor. Cirith Ungol.
It's fine.
That's good. That's good.
I like the glimpse of the Watchers. They don't need to be there.
But they didn't spend time in it, unlike Rankin Bass.
Oh, God. But they look great. It's nice. It's a fun little Easter egg.
Yeah.
And there's that. And we get the whole little sequence and the running up, I'll stick them before I stick you. I do like when it's Frodo and Sam together again, and you're giving back the ring. Reasonably well done.
That's a great moment. I like that moment.
Yeah. I will say this, though, and backing up a bit, this is another thing where the structure of the book and the adaptation and everything else means they can't really sell moments in Return of the King as well as they would have in the book, because if you're reading the books and you read the Two Towers, at the end of book 3, Merry and Pippin are separated. Then at the end of book 4, Merry and Frodo and Sam are separated. Then, so you've got those two. You got that right there. So when you get back to book 5, meaning the start of Return of the King, and it's sort of like where you see eventually you do get the Merry and Pippin reunion, and then you eventually will get the Frodo and Sam reunion, because everything has to happen within the scope of Return of the King, both of those separations. It doesn't land as well. It would be so great if there had been a way to make it sort of like there probably was never going to be a way to have it be something like a hanging separation from Two Towers as filmed into this. But again, what can you do? Just the nature of the beast. So that's things for you. And then we thankfully get, I guess thankfully is the word, the very, very short version of getting to Mount Doom. As compared to the extended version.
You know what? I'm totally fine with that.
It's fine. It is a lot of nothing.
It's so much nothing, and it's so internal that would be so difficult.
Can I just say, this movie really, really reveals the limitations of the trilogy's vision of Sauron, because in Fellowship of the Ring, to a lesser extent, the Two Towers, it's great. It's just, creepy eye, flashing on screen, whatever. He's there. It's scary. Oh, no. But in this movie, he's like, I'm a spotlight. I'm going to see you. I'm going to see you. There you are. It's like the beam and the way he moves so fast. It's like, this just looks kind of silly. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You just look like a flashlight. I don't.
It's that horror thing where you showed the thing too much. The reveal of the monster like removes the power from it. Yeah, kind of.
If they wanted to lean into the whole Sauron is growing in strength thing, they could have had something happen to the eye. Like, where'd it go? Could be anywhere. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know if that's good. But I really do hate the cartoony like eye looking around.
It would be interesting if it had increased, if it had started like less on fire and gotten more on fire as the movies kind of plug along.
You could theoretically have had it work in a way where in Fellowship of the Ring, his appearances as such are always in visions. And you don't really get a sense of where it's located. You just get a sense of this power. You do get a brief bit in the vision on top of at the breaking of the Fellowship, where he is looking. You do a quick zoom in on the tower and sees on top of the tower, but it's still just sort of quick and weird enough. You're sort of like and all that. And if it had held to that and just sort of like the sense of just something on the horizon or something that sort of zooms in that's more mental than actually there, then if we had gotten to it and it had been maybe a little more like the book where it's mostly hidden in shadow and there's like a flash or something that comes out.
Yeah. You see a flash of red and Frodo still faints at seeing that flash of red. It's so, it works so well. maybe a little less cinematic, but
So while they get to Mount Doom and Gollum reappears and Andy Serkis is being himself and all that, we've got the Black Gate, we've got the March, we've got Stand, Men of the West, we've got all that. You were not happy, Jared.
Yeah, it's okay.
For my part, my problem is this. On the one hand, Viggo is doing a fantastic job, in my opinion, of giving a speech. On the other hand, he says, on this good earth, the good blasted earth in front of the...
We're probably on like the dead marshes area, like the dead land, whatever they are. It's
not very good earth, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, I know he means
he doesn't mean
he means overall, but it's a little, like this ash pile, okay.
It's like, thanks.
It is really
So.
Interesting, and it was the correct choice to not have him actually fight Sauron.
Oh,
but
God.
the reason
That was such a bananas decision in the first place.
I can't believe
and
it.
We lucked out.
If this movie was made nowadays,
yes,
they would have happened.
They would have insisted 100%, and
also,
that sucks.
The biggest mistake with the theatrical version of the Black Gate is no Mouth of Sauron. That guy rules.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Again, with
it's a great moment.
The other stuff that you spend time on, stop spending the time on that and put the Mouth of Sauron in. I think because it kind of the same thing with like Gandalf being like, okay, and now Sauron is no longer a problem. He went to his home planet, It's a similar thing here, and I will say the editing, it's much more deftly done for Aragorn and company being at the Black Gate and then it opening and then being like, oh shit. They cut around the Mouth of Sauron much better, let's say.
Yeah. I didn't miss it. Seeing it the first time, I was like, but I get it. I get why you wouldn't do that. You don't feel the lack the way you do with Saruman. But I still wish he was there, even though he doesn't cause a gap in the story.
Something. It just feels it does feel like something is missing, like a beat is missing.
And it's saying something about evil and Sauron, the fact that he's there to mess with them. Yeah. Like explicitly in the book, he's like, Sauron had a mind to play these mice before killing them or whatever it was. So he comes out with the male shirt and he's like, we got him. And everybody's like, okay, well, it's over.
Cool.
And we're going to fight anyway.
We're here.
Yeah. We don't really have a choice, but also, I mean, maybe he's lying. I forget the actual thought process as they go through, but it's for them, it's over. We failed. And I think you need that at that point in the story, especially because, like, you the viewer, know that Frodo and Sam are on Mount Doom. They're close.
Yeah,
these characters
the
don't.
Adaptation works. Yeah,
and I don't know. I feel like it adds something that is.
It does. I was always convinced. Let me rephrase that. I was increasingly convinced during my first viewing of it at that midnight showing. I was thinking to myself, is Jackson actually going to kill off one of the main characters? And I was convinced it was going to be Legolas. I was convinced in the staging and the way you see Legolas in that charge towards Aragorn under the troll, the repurposed troll.
Looks like he's going to get Haldir'd.
Yeah, something like that. Part of me was sort of like, is he actually going to do it? That would actually be kind of bold. I don't think I entirely mind either, but he didn't.
I would have appreciated it, I think.
Yeah, it would have been interesting.
Depending on which character.
Yeah, you never know. So, and of course, and we get both Merry and Pippin at this time instead of just Pippin in the book, but there's that. Anyway, Frodo and Sam and Gollum and Mount Doom. The end of it all.
We've already talked a lot about Howard Shore, I know, but the music where it's just this flute or whistle or whatever it is, just juxtaposed with this arid misery of Mordor it's so fragile and beautiful, and it's kind of similar to when the Ents are marching out and there's just the one voice singing, and it's just underscoring the fragility. And then we've got like Renee Fleming putting her whole heart into the mic for all this stuff.
And the flutes by James Galway, they swing big. They got the heavy hitters. Yeah,
I forgot to credit it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The music for that part is fantastic.
And then of course the famous "I Can Carry You" and everything swells and it's
so
beautiful.
God. And then
the theater cheers. It's great.
It is truly baffling to me. And at the time, Jared, to go back to your, like hour and a half ago point about this making you want to root for a movie at the Oscars. Yeah, we might want to, Anyway.
No, wait. Really fast. If we had any guts at all, we would end this thing 4 or 5 times.
We're not that nuts. We're not that nuts. We'll get to that, though.
Sorry, go on, Oriana.
But I can't believe Sean Astin didn't get nominated because his performance
is so good.
Again, his face, people's faces in this are so good. I know that's the point of acting, but Sean Astin's face when Frodo says it's mine is the most heartbreaking thing in I mean, maybe not all of cinema, but like it certainly felt like it.
Watching
right?
him like the quiet, like, no, come on, no.
Please don't do this.
Yeah.
Is just, it's so devastating and perfect. And I mean, really, well done, Sean Astin.
An unsung hero of these movies in some ways.
Truly. And like
everybody loves Sam. I know he's not really neglected, but like people don't talk enough about Sean Astin's performance as Sam that makes him feel like the guy you want to make you potatoes every day.
And I do love that Gollum gets one tiny bit of utterly unbridled joy, and we have that camera pull back through the ring as he's looking at it, and it's actually that works very well indeed. Yeah. So I thought that was really nice, and then over the side, and okay. Again, I said this in the Two Towers episode. If Aragorn hadn't already gone over with the warg in that in Two Towers, then having Frodo go over and hold the edge would be more of a, whoa, okay, all right, this is new, as opposed to me going like, here we go again, another over the cliff thing. Why?
Yeah.
But okay, fine, a little extra action. Then everything blows up really good.
Yeah. That's so good, though. That's moment
great.
Where they like the ring is destroyed, everybody knows it now, and they're like, yeah, Frodo, and then the mountain goes boom as
and
the chorus is like,
Frodo!
Yeah, but especially as the music is being all triumphant, as if the soundtrack hasn't noticed that Frodo is probably dead. It's such a good like mash of like tones, and just having it come at that point where everybody's like, yeah, oh god, is very good.
Mm-hmm. And I will always in my brain years beforehand, I had actually figured in my mind that the Barad-dûr collapse scene would be like that to some degree. The idea of everything being sucked in and blown out again, which is actually a very good callback, of course, to the very beginning of Fellowship of the Ring when we see that's what happens to Sauron. Yeah. So it's like, okay, thematic balance, I get it, and I kind of like it, and it's a nice technical achievement too. But yes, and then we I do the famous fade to black, start your shipping sequence. We got Frodo and Sam in a clinch on Mount Doom, and they only have so much time left. Will they kiss? Won't they?
We don't know what happens in that cut.
We don't know. It fades.
So many. Oh, they're gonna kiss now, right? Moments. In the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I think even my dad, who is not the sort of person who thinks along these lines, was like, "Are they gonna kiss now?"
Wow.
Which, like, for a 50-year-old conservative Christian man is like the vibes are powerful, okay? Like,
they sure are.
Everybody's
so
noticing.
Anyway, then we move into the welter of endings, but I gotta say this. So Frodo wakes up. It's a repeat, of course, of the way the Rivendell waking up scene is staged to a degree, and everyone comes in one by one. The theater loved it. I'm sorry, opening night, everyone got a cheer as they came through the door. It was fantastic. I loved it. It was a great way to salute things. So, and the whole coronation scene, while of course not quite the way is the book.
You bow to no. I cry every time. I'm not like a crying person. I don't really cry that much. It's like Paddington 2 and these movies, I feel like.
Fair enough. Fine comparison. No one will argue. But yeah, you bow to no one moment. Boy, yeah, the cheers were loud and long. That was pretty damn special.
Not to ruin this for anybody though, but I do feel like if they are that special, why aren't they up front with everybody else? Why are they out in the middle of the crowd? Like, come on. I know it's for this moment, but come on.
I mean, that's the funniest thing to me is that of the whole thing is that the equivalent of it's Frodo who brings the crown in the book. Frodo brings the crown over and Gandalf puts it on. Says in the movie it's Gimli. Essentially, you see him standing up there.
That?
Oh, that's weird. Yeah.
It's like, is there any reason for you to be here? Why you?
Yeah.
And I do admit I kind of like the staging of the whole of Aragorn sees Arwen again, and clearly in it unexpectedly in this case, and then that little pause, smoosh, big kiss. Sure.
Oh my god, the worst kiss of all time. He just like eats her. He just like his mouth is so big and her face is so small, and then like it's like Elrond is like watching this, trying to be happy about it. Like, yeah, it's weird, man. I think that was like one of the few notes of this that felt kind of false. I was like, oh my god, is that how people kiss? Because I was 16 and not like super well versed in those arts.
What's also funny is that immediately before that, Aragorn sees Legolas and has almost the same expression.
Yeah. I was about to say, he really does, doesn't he? Who's
I
with
remember
who here?
being like in the theater and watching that and going like, "What
Are they gonna?
is this? What is happening?" And then what happens. But it was just like, why is this?
It is weird. Like, why was Legolas there? Like, I don't know. It's just very, very strange.
It's so funny.
So we get back. We have, of course, no scouring of the Shire. We talked about it in our episode on the scouring,
Yeah.
but no scouring. But let's face it, it was a long movie.
It wasn't long. It didn't have to be that long. But
True. So, as shot, it was a long movie. So,
It was long.
So we get to the wind down. Whatever else, I think the scene in the Prancing Pony where they wordlessly toast and they don't have to say a word.
Oh,
yeah,
Very well done.
it is. That's so good.
That is good visual
the guy
storytelling.
with the giant pumpkin. I
He's so
just
proud of
love
his
him.
big old pumpkin.
Yeah.
And again, because I had the captions on, I got to all of the chatter around them is in the captions, and it's like
really?
watch the pumpkin is one.
Yes.
Fantastic.
That's kind of great. I do like how we get what's her name, who was the one who was like, the older hobbit giving them the disapproving looks at the beginning of the bag. She's just living her life in the pub too. She's just happy. She's just
Is
there.
that a lady? I thought that was a man.
No, that's Mr. Proudfoot.
Is that Mr. Proudfoot?
Yeah.
No,
I
wait
mean,
a
there
minute.
might be a disapproving
Not the guy
hobbit
at the
lady,
party at the beginning. The one who's like, she's the one sweeping at the
No,
very
it's the same.
beginning.
It's the
That's a
same
man.
guy.
That's
That
a guy. Yeah,
that is the Proudfoot.
That's a dude.
Yeah.
Gender confusion. So,
I mean, it is Tolkien. Gender is weird.
this is true.
Sure.
Well, that same hobbit. I like seeing that same hobbit.
Yeah.
It's just sort of kicking back and having a time in the pub. Perfectly great.
Yeah.
Okay. So
He
I
only
do
hates
like that.
outsiders. It's nice.
Yeah. I do like Pippin catching the bouquet. That was cute. So,
Yeah.
okay, the little
Oh
moments.
yeah, Sam comes down with a case of the not gays.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's
Almost
the
out of
other
nowhere.
moment actually at the end when they're on the side of Mount Doom and just they think that this is it, and Sam's like, I wish I could have gotten married, and it's like, okay, man, like this is weird. Like it's kind of weird. It just feels like a case of the not gays. Like
A little bit of compulsory heterosexuality.
yeah, just a little bit. Not like it doesn't ruin anything, but it is like, okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. Could have been worse.
We do that, and then it's the slow wind down into the Grey Havens.
Which we don't. There's so much winding down, and for the most part, I think the only reason it feels like there's 70 different endings is that it keeps fading to black, which it doesn't need to do.
Yes.
But the one that really doesn't need to be there is the long, drawn out, like Frodo wandering around Bag End or something.
Yeah.
To me, that's just a little much.
No, we could have had that in voiceover as they're going to the Grey Havens. I feel
Maybe,
like that would have been fine.
I know that it's good to come back to Bag End and see it more.
Yeah.
But it's just it goes on a little long.
Which is why it's so weird to me that, like, when Sam comes back from the Grey Havens, they're not living in Bag End.
Yeah.
Why?
Never liked that.
That would have been a great place to. We've come back here. But
Yeah, the green door. Like, there we go. That round green door.
Speaking of the Grey Havens, they're one of my favorite locations in the movie. That's not relevant to what I'm about to say, but it's so beautiful. It has always such a beautiful scene. Everybody's crying. I always get a little choked up.
Mhm.
I don't understand why there's this whole fake out about whether Frodo's going.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would have been a lot more powerful if it's the way it is in the books, where he knows that he's going and nobody else.
No one else does.
Like, it's a shock to the others.
Yeah.
We don't have to have Gandalf being like, "Oh, by the way,
And
you can
also,
come too." Yeah.
Surprise.
very weird, very weird. And also, like, the ship is empty. Like, it's not a big ship, but we don't see any of the others who have gotten onto the ship. So it is just kind of like, I don't know.
I love how the purse is there, but otherwise just, says nothing.
Oh, boy.
He doesn't even got a line. It's so funny.
Just got a line. And Círdan's there and is utterly unidentified, just like, oh, hi, Círdan.
Yeah, which is fine. He's a fun Easter egg for the book people. It's okay.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, at least, okay, fine. Frodo kissed Sam. Maybe not in the way the book implied. I don't know.
It's so it's the tenderness.
So
it just makes my
It
heart
is tender.
ache. Oh,
It is good. The farewells are lovely,
male
especially
tenderness.
Yeah, just crying their eyes out. It's like, of course.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
should.
not to be flip.
Friends.
That is a hard moment to sell. I think it's sold very, very well. And everything combines pretty well too. The fact that the actors, as they said later, they had to shoot that scene like over 3 different times because something kept goofing up or all the rest of it. They were like working up again is a testament to their ability to make that scene work. That's
acting.
It is a fine little just good farewells to the characters who everyone will fall in love with and all that. And the thing that my mom, of all people, and I mean this positively, noted about it, that she also was like, what's great about that scene? When Frodo is on the boat and he turns back and he's looking exactly like the young hobbit he was at the very start of Fellowship of the Ring.
I was going to point that out.
Mm-hmm. It's like the cares are finally gone. And he's finally on to somewhere else and something else. And that little sort of just subtle nod he gives before he turns away too. It's well done. It's well done. And then
Into the West.
And into the West. Let's talk that song because oh boy.
Oh, I love it. Every
great.
time I listen to it, it's like pulling my soul out of my body.
It is. After having landed some pretty good, ending songs already and vocal performances throughout, that was exactly the way to end it. Really, it was. Of course, there's the real world connection in terms of the lyrics about the young filmmaker Cameron McIntosh, who had a young Maori filmmaker who they'd befriended who had died of cancer, and it was partially an homage to him. The lyrics, but that made it all tie together well. And Annie Lennox. Boy, oh boy, she's got a voice and she knows how to use it. My goodness, what a performance. And the credits roll and we get the audience cheer moments of everyone's names along with the Alan Lee sketches based on the photographs and all the sketches and things. It makes for a nice contrast with the other 2 credits and we wrap up and the music and da-da-da. Wow, experience. Yeah. Okay, so let's take some minutes to talk about the impact and everything that happened. Okay, so the awards. It won everything it was nominated for. It won everything. Clearly, they were awarding the series, not the film.
Yeah,
for sure.
Clearly. Let's be blunt about this. Yes, it was great seeing them sweep the frickin' board. I loved it. But that was acknowledging the fact that 1, they had pulled off the full adaptation. 2, it had made boatloads of money. And 3, the fans would have had an uprising. Probably if it hadn't won. That really is, though, what it is. And, the fact that it was, yes, every last technical award, every last artistic award, every last, the song, the director, the screen, the whole 9 yards. My favorite joke from that ceremony was I think it was Best Animated Feature went to for the makers of A Wonderful Film, The Triplets of Belleville. Absolutely great. And they said a joke something like, whoever it was behind it saying, I am so glad that we wrote our own story and wasn't an adapted screenplay or something like that. It's realizing it's like, there's the least room for me. And it's a fantastic film, by the way. If you haven't seen it, it's just absolutely great. Gets even better with the years. It was obviously going to be such a high point moment. I remember the One Ring Net talking about the big party that happened. Of course, there's footage of that on the documentaries. Everyone gets things. But now here we are 20 years later. And what do we think about the impact of these films and Peter Jackson and everything and how fandom has developed? What do we think?
I mean,
I'm
this
unhappy.
fundamentally changed how films are made. Like, it changed the business.
Now everybody wants the franchise, the series. It has to. You have to be able to continue it, that kind of thing. It's just like, I think it did a lot of good in some ways, but it also, like, I'm not sure if it actually convinced anybody to take more risks on other weird fantasy books, but
not business people. No, it did. However, it definitely inspire like an entire generation of people to like seek employment in the film industry. I like, just totally anecdotally, I know so many people who watched they got the special extended version DVDs and watched all the behind the scenes stuff really made you think that if you if you care about art and making things, like, this was a cool industry to get into.
Outside of filmmaking, I feel like, I don't have sources for this, so don't ask me, but I feel like it had sort of a positive impact on masculinity, because I know, like, early 2000s, late 90s, it was like, oh, you're gay if you wear colored socks. Like, if you watch The Birdcage, he's like wearing colored socks, and everybody's like, oh god, everybody's gonna clock that you're gay. Maybe just overall cultural attitudes shifting, but also these movies having crying men everywhere who sometimes kiss each other. Is like, no, it's okay, you can do this and be healthy. And I don't know if that's responsible, but it certainly, if not influenced to a large extent, is a barometer of how far things came. I don't know. You don't see Bruce Willis crying and kissing, I don't know, the cop in Die Hard or anything. So
I think, I mean, it's clearly the before-after moment in terms of Tolkien fandom. I mean, it was essentially a few decades of, continuing low-level popularity where people knew the name of the book or might have heard of the author or things like that and had a sense of the impact, to a case where now everybody knows the story, a version of the story, but now they know the story. Yeah. Gollum is someone who is known. I mean, there were Gollum references.
Reference Gollum in a mainstream comedy, and everybody's like, I get it.
Yeah. Gollum references on, like, on one of the, on like the Drag Race Philippines. There was a random My Precious reference that the host did one time in an episode this year. I was like, in my wildest dreams, I would have never imagined. This type of thing where it's just it's part of the woodwork. It is something that, again, its impact is known. For me, it was interesting seeing what did and didn't happen with adaptations after that, because they tried to do other things. Like they tried to make Aragon a franchise.
Oh boy.
That died.
I just threw him in my mouth a little bit, as the kids say.
They were a little more successful initially with Narnia, but because the first film still, I think, works till this one didn't come on.
It's good. It just immediately falls on its face with the next one.
And then by the time I got to Dawn Treader, it's like, no. So, cross fingers for Greta Gerwig. Maybe we'll see what happens now. I think the thing that sort of, by the time the next big change happened, inevitably, was when Game of Thrones hit, because the idea was, here's a more grown-up version of it. And then it gets a lot of same subcultural, obsessive cachet really kicks in, with other factors behind it too. The more widespread idea of what is prestige TV, worldwide, internet sharing of culture. This way, it's something that's only on TV. Now all of a sudden it's become more of a lingua franca around the world. This idea of streaming networks, etc. Even though famously it took HBO a long time to get there. Set aside that, a combination is what happened with where Peter Jackson had gotten to that point. And that's interesting too, because his own career after that has never quite been the same as a director. No. Because if you think about it, what happened next? He immediately did his King Kong adaptation, unneeded. I saw it, but it was unneeded. They did The Lovely Bones. On the one hand...
Right. Oh, wow. I forgot about The Lovely Bones.
Everyone forgot
so
about
did
The Lovely
everybody
Bones.
else.
Yeah, totally everyone forgot about it. That was his next one. It was the type of thing, it's like, this is the same filmmaker who did Heavenly Creatures. There's kind of, you can understand him trying to do The Lovely Bones. But it sort of was there. It didn't really... It had some very good casting, but it didn't really land. And then we talked about the Hobbit stuff, in our episode earlier this year. And our thoughts on that. Go back and enjoy our live episode in Portland. Number 50. And then after that, it's sort of like he's sort of more known as the documentary guy. He hasn't really done another narrative film since. He's done the World War I documentary. He did the Beatles stuff. He did that new Beatles AI video. why. And he's more well known now for basically having set up an infrastructure for film stuff in New Zealand that's being used for, well, Avatar right now is what it is, but the idea is something that's equivalent of a combined studio and special effects house all in Wellington, which he said was kind of a dream anyway. He's at an impact, fine. But yeah, the wider impacts are just kind of weird. I mean, Rings of Power, and the fact that the Hobbit films changed labor law, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, there are sorts of weird legacies that have been left. It's one of those things sort of like, on the one hand, nothing could stay as it was. It was going to be a moment in time. And Peter Jackson said he knew himself it's going to be the first thing on, whenever I go, they'll talk about that. He was right. And it's just sort of weird to sort of see where it goes that way. And Tolkien fandom, it'd be interesting if we were all like in our teens. How would we see Tolkien? Would it only have been through the films? Would the films have been the first experience? How would we sort of read the characters? Where are ways to do it? It's sort of like its impact is so interesting in that regard because it's now part of the woodwork.
Yeah, this is how everybody thinks of the books now.
Yeah,
that this is how the books look. When you
the visuals are all... This is it. This is how Middle-earth looks. This is how it sounds. Like, we've talked about that with, like, the musical and the Rings of Power. Like, this just for...
Elves are Art Nouveau. Dwarves are Art Deco. Gondor is Byzantine. Mordor looks like this. It's... And then, like, every fantasy movie following in its footsteps was like, okay, well, this is how you film this kind of thing. It's like everything has to be a coherent world, which is fine. There's no right or wrong about that, but it's just like, this is how you do it. And fantasy movies before that didn't have that same kind of like world building aspect, and now we're doing that.
Right, yeah. Now
it all looks like Lord of the Rings.
And it is important to remember, that for all of us, that beforehand the role models were simply not entirely there. There were epics, certainly. There were space opera epics, famous, Star Wars, obviously, and things like that. So these precursors can be told, but it is a unique turning point moment in that regard, and nothing is quite the same since. The use of CGI, for better or for worse, comes through that. I mean, the idea of CGI army hordes fighting each other, as can be seen in 8 million Marvel movies, it comes from what happened there. But again, you get more of a sense of weight to a relative degree in the Lord of the Rings movies. And sometimes I was thinking watching now, I was like, if it was being first adapted now, it would be adapted as a streaming series first. It wouldn't be movies.
Yeah. Okay,
I would argue.
You know how I think all of us tend to be like, we don't need any more Tolkien adaptations. We certainly don't need Lord of the Rings. So I was watching this and I was like, okay, but man, if you had 13 to 16 episodes, you could really make a killer adaptation of the Lord of the Rings. I'm so sorry. But we don't. We don't need any more.
No,
we don't need any more. We don't. But you could.
You could.
You could do 16 episodes, and then you would have real room to let the story, and you could live with the characters more, and have a richer understanding. I'm not saying that we should. I'm not saying that I should. No.
But
no.
if you did, no.
But yeah, it does feel like, yes, a streaming adaptation, a TV episodic format is much more of suited to the shape of the story.
Yeah, you can spend an entire episode in Mordor or whatever rather than having to cut back to the Pelennor Fields or Blackgate and that kind of thing.
Well, it's been we've talked a bit, so maybe we should wrap up here, and move into sort of ending because longest episode yet, but really it probably was going to be no other
longest
way.
Movie,
longest movie, longest episode. Okay, so we are now looking ahead to what will be the first episode of the new year. The choice of topic comes back to me. So, for the past few years, the idea has been to try and do things that are not Middle-earth related, just to give us a sort of fresh little clean palette to start the year. This will be sort of the case this time, but not quite the expected way to do it, and it will have some Middle-earth in it, because it's unavoidable. And we'll also take advantage of the fact that the new edition just came out. We're going to look at the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. We will take advantage of the new book that has come out with a whole swath of new letters in it. I'm not expecting the three of us to necessarily read every letter. If you want to do that, that'll be great. I think our focus may be on the newest ones, because that'll have some of the new ones that are the newly presented, because that might be some of the stuff that we haven't seen before. But since Tolkien wrote no autobiography, and this is as close as we'll ever get to it, and there's a lot of info in there, and it is presented as a book, and we might as well consider it. And hopefully we'll have a time to get through it through the holiday here as we can. So that will be for next time. But we have some other general news just to pass on. First, shout out again to the wonderful review we got from Cat W, I think their name was, on Apple Podcasts. We thank you very much. One of the nicest things anyone has ever said about our podcast. We've gotten some lovely comments. Deeply appreciate it. So thank you, Kat, out there listening. And if anyone else wants to leave reviews, please do so on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you're listening. If there's a spot for reviews, we always appreciate it. And we'd like to call attention to the fact that, yes, as always, besides following us on Blue Sky and stuff like that individually and through our collective account, please do consider joining the Patreon for our hosts at Megaphonic FM. And we got reasons why. Because there are exclusive podcasts you will only hear if you're a Patreon member, besides joining our Discord and all that. So, if you join, you get to hear the Mug Up series of podcasts that both Oriana and Jared have appeared on. And as well, the newest episode is another one of a co-host, Nadia, who co-hosts with Jared on the Kitchen Party podcast. And interviewer Mikey got great stories from her. You'll learn more about Jared and how he's the gooey duck whisperer. And we will explain no more. You have to listen.
This is Nadia's version of events.
Well, you get to hear a version of it. And the other reason is this. While our next episode with By-The-Bywater won't be until it comes out in January, you will be hearing us on another episode of another podcast along with a bunch of other people if you subscribe to the Patreon. That's the only way that you can do that. So the podcast is called The Greatest Podcast Ever Told or Said or something like that. I forget how it is. And the idea is this came up as sort of a joke last year when a whole bunch of the hosts on the network all came together and we reviewed the film The Greatest Story Ever Told from the 1960s, a terrible biblical epic. We will not be doing that type of thing this time. We're going to be doing the 1970 musical adaptation of A Christmas Carol called Scrooge, starring Albert Finney. This actually exists. In fact, it's even been recently remade. And we and all the other hosts, are as many as we can get, will all be doing a big joint podcast to talk about it as a bit of a holiday treat. That will be coming out sometime before December 25th. We'll be recording it here in the next couple of weeks. But again, the only way you're going to get to hear it and get to hear the three of us talk about things not Tolkien for a long time will be to go ahead and to join the Patreon. So please do consider that. And again, there's our Discord, and there's much more besides. It's all great. But we've talked a lot. We will just simply say it's been a year for us. We have completed the Peter Jackson adaptation going through. We spent a lot of time on it. We had celebrated our 50th anniversary. Not quite yet. We celebrated our 50th episode. 50th episode earlier this year. It may give us time. 50th episode earlier this year of the first live ever event in Portland. That was still an amazing treat that could happen. And we've gotten some of the nicest and best comments throughout the year about our continuing work. Newer listeners, people who've been listening for a while saying, boy, this is great. We appreciate it. We are just doing our best. We're just coming up with ideas, topics, and we take them and run with them, and it's great. And we promise you we will never record quite as long an episode as this ever again. So ending on that note, thank you all very much. Please enjoy your holidays. Please enjoy the end of 2023. We will see you all in 2024. Until then.